The Talking Statues of Rome. The Talking Statues of Rome are a group of 6 statues scattered throughout the city, known since the 16th century for having been used as megaphones by the Roman people to express anonymous criticism, satire, and invective against the powerful, especially nobles and clergy. These messages, often in verse and called pasquinate from the most famous statue, the Pasquino, represented a form of popular dissent in an era in which freedom of expression was severely limited. The 6 statues, collectively known as the Congress of the Wits, are Pasquino, Marforio, Madama Lucrezia, the Babuino, the Porter, and the Abate Luigi. Each of them has a history and a particular characteristic, but all have had the role of ironic and biting spokesmen of criticism towards power, with messages that denounce corruption, arrogance, and bad governance, often also addressed to the Pope. The Squino, a torso from the Hellenistic era, is the most famous and symbolic statue placed near Piazza Navona since 1501, around which the most famous pasquinate were concentrated. The other statues, such as Marforio, perhaps an allegory of the Tiber, Madama Lucrezia, a female marble bust, and Abate Luigi, a late Roman Tegatus, complete this unusual stone parliament that has given voice to the Roman people for centuries. In short, the talking statues are a symbol of irreverent romanity and of the people's ability to express dissent with humor and creativity, keeping alive a tradition of social and political criticism that has spanned the centuries to the present day.
The statue of Pasquino between history and legend. The statue of Pasquino is a famous talking statue of Rome, found in 1501 during the excavations for the renovation of Palazzo Orsini in the area where Piazza di Pasquino is today. It is a mutilated torso from the imperial age, probably a Hellenistic copy from the 3rd century BC, depicting Menelaus holding the body of the dying Patroclus, a subject linked to the events of the Trojan War. The statue became famous because satirical verses, called pasquinate, were hung on it, with which the Roman people expressed biting and ironic criticisms against the rulers and the temporal power of the popes, often the target of invectives. This tradition began after Cardinal Oliviero Carafa had the statue placed in a corner of Piazza di Perione, now Piazza Pasquino. Despite papal attempts to have it removed or monitored to prevent posting, the Romans continued to use Pasquino as a means of political satire, so much so that other talking statues were born in Rome, such as Madama Lucrezia, Marforio, the Babuino, the Porter, and the Abate Luigi, used for the same purpose. The origin of the name Pasquino is uncertain. Some hypotheses connect it to a craftsman, an innkeeper, or a teacher of Latin grammar, known for his satirical streak, or to a character from Boccaccio's Decameron. The statue has become a symbol of the popular voice and freedom of criticism in Rome, a tradition that continues today, with satirical verses that are no longer hung on the statue itself, but on a pillar that supports it. In short, the statue of Pasquino is an ancient Roman relic that, thanks to the tradition of pasquinate, has become a symbol of popular satire against power, representing the ironic and critical voice of the Roman people towards the rulers and popes from the 16th century onwards.
The statue of Abate Luigi between history and legend. The statue of Abate Luigi is a late Roman sculpture depicting a man in a toga, probably a magistrate or public official, of almost life-size dimensions. It was found in the 16th century in the foundations of Palazzo Vidoni in the Sant'Eustachio district of Rome, and is thought to have been part of the decorations of the Hecatostylum, the portico of 100 columns. The statue takes its name from the popular Roman tradition that associates it with its resemblance to a witty sacristan of the nearby Church of the Santissimo Siderio, hence the nickname Abate Luigi. Originally positioned in various places such as Palazzo Caffarelli Vidoni and Palazzo Chigi, since 1924 it has been located in Piazza Vidoni, next to the Church of Sant'Andrea della Valle. Abate Luigi is one of the famous talking statues of Rome, together with Marforio, Pasquino, the Babuino, the Porter, and Madama Lucrezia. These statues were used as supports to post Pasquinades, or anonymous satirical posters that expressed popular dissent during the Rome of the popes. This statue is currently headless. The original head, badly damaged by atmospheric agents, has been stolen and replaced several times, but after the last theft in 2013, it has not been replaced. In 1966, after the head was stolen, the statue spoke through a satirical Pasquinade addressed to the thief, demonstrating the symbolic role it had for the Romans. On the base of the statue is engraved a poem by the historian Giuseppe Tomasetti, which summarizes the history and fame of Abate Luigi as a symbolic figure of Roman urban satire. I was a citizen of ancient Rome. Now everyone calls me Abate Luigi. I conquered with Marforio and with Pasquino, in urban satire's eternal fame. I had offenses, misfortunes, and burial, but here a new and finally safe life. In short, the statue of Abate Luigi is an important late Roman find that, thanks to the tradition of talking statues, has become a symbol of satire and popular voice in Rome, with a history marked by displacements, vandalism, and popular legends.
The statue of Marforio between history and legend. The statue of Marforio is an imposing Roman marble sculpture dating back to the 1st century AD, probably depicting a river deity such as the god Oceanus, the Tiber, or the Nera River. The male figure is depicted semi-reclining, with a long beard, a cloak that covers part of his body, and in his left hand he holds a shell, added in a later restoration. History. The statue was found in the 16th century in the Forum of Augustus, near the Temple of Mars Ultor, in an area called in the Middle Ages Forum of Mars, or Martis Forum, from which the name Marforio probably derives, a deformation of the Latin. Other hypotheses on the origin of the name refer to a missing inscription with the words Mar and Faro, or to a family called Marioli or Marfuoli who owned land in the surrounding area. Initially placed at the foot of the Clivus Argentarius, the statue was moved by order of Pope Sixtus V first to Piazza San Marco and then to the Campidoglio, where it was inserted into a fountain designed by Giacomo della Porta in 1594. During the 18th century, with the construction of the Palazzo Nuovo, the fountain was dismantled and the statue placed in the courtyard of the new building, where it still stands, inserted into a new fountain designed by Filippo Burigioni in 1734. Legend and cultural role. Marforio is one of the 6 talking statues of Rome, together with Pasquino, Madama Lucrezia, the Babuino, the Abate Luigi, and the statue of the porter. These statues were used as megaphones of the Roman people, on which anonymous epigrams and satires were posted that expressed social and political criticism. Marforio is considered the ideal sidekick of Pasquino, with whom he maintained a satirical dialogue through this so-called Pasquinade. A famous exchange concerns Napoleon's raids in Rome. Marforio asked, "Is it true that all the French are thieves?" And Pasquino replied, "Not all, but Bonaparte." These satirical dialogues were an expression of popular protest against power and injustice, and Marforio thus became a symbol of freedom of expression and social criticism. In short, Marforio is a Roman statue of great historical and symbolic value, both for its origin and location, and for its role in the tradition of the talking statues of Rome, ironic and biting spokesman of popular discontent.
The statue of Madama Lucrezia between history and legend. Madama Lucrezia is a colossal marble bust from the Roman era, about 3 meters high, located in Rome at the corner between Palazzo Venezia and the Basilica of San Marco al Campidoglio. The statue is the only female representative of the so-called talking statues, or the Congrega degli Arguti, a group of statues that, with biting satires, expressed popular discontent towards the rulers and public figures of Rome. History and identity. The statue is probably a representation of the Egyptian goddess Isis or one of her priestesses, as suggested by the characteristic knot of the dress on the chest and the fact that it originally came from the nearby Iseum Campens, a temple dedicated to Isis. Some hypotheses identify it with Faustina Minor, wife of the Emperor Antoninus Pius, in the guise of an Isiac priestess. The name Madama Lucrezia derives from the tradition that the statue was dedicated or donated to Lucrezia di Alagno, a noblewoman and favorite of Alfonso V of Aragon, King of Naples. After Alfonso's death, Lucrezia was forced to leave Naples due to the hostility of her successor and moved to Rome, living near the statue. The term Madama was used in Naples in the 15th century, but not in Rome, confirming the link with Lucrezia di Alagno. Legends and popular traditions. Madama Lucrezia was the protagonist of popular events such as the Ballo dei Giddi, which took place on May 1st. The statue was adorned with necklaces of garlic, chili peppers, onions and ribbons, and popular dances and games were held around it. During the Roman Republic of 1799, the statue fell from its pedestal and the Roman people wrote on its shoulders the phrase "Non any posso vetter più," expressing their discontent with the current government. The statue broke into 8 pieces and was restored in 1806. It is said that the Pai di Marmo, a marble foot located near the church of Santo Stefano del Cacco, was originally part of the statue of Madama Lucrezia, since the sandal and the dress correspond to the trousseau of the priestesses of Isis. In short, Madama Lucrezia is a Roman statue of great historical and cultural importance, shrouded in legends that connect it to a real historical figure and to Roman popular traditions, with an important role as a symbol of social satire and popular participation.
The baboon statue between history and legend. The baboon statue is a sculpture depicting a reclining Silenus, made around 1576 and originally part of a semi-public fountain built by the merchant Alessandro Grandi in Rome. The statue, carved in tuff and placed on a Roman granite basin, was called Babuino. Babuino in Roman dialect means monkey by the Roman people because of its ugliness, which resembled a monkey. This fountain was originally located against the main facade of Palazzo Grandi, then passed to the Boncompagni Divisi family, who in 1738 moved the statue to a niche decorated with 2 travertine dolphins. In 1877, the fountain was dismantled. The statue was placed in the courtyard of the palace, while the basin was used as a drinking trough in Via Flaminia. In 1957, thanks to the intervention of citizens, the statue and the basin were reassembled and placed near their original location, next to the Church of San Atanasio dei Greci. The baboon is one of the 6 talking statues of Rome, that is, statues on which anonymous satirical epigrams against the papal power and the ruling classes were affixed, often at night to be read by passers-by the next day. The invectives written on the baboon, called babuinate, were similar to the more famous Pasquinade of the statue of Pasquino, with which the baboon entered into competition. In short, the statue of the baboon is a symbol of Roman popular satire, born from the derision for its ugliness, which also influenced the name of the street where it is located, Via del Babuino, and represents a historical testimony of the popular and political culture of Rome from the 16th century onwards.
The statue of the porter between history and legend. The Fontana del Facchino is one of the 6 talking statues of Rome, created in 1580 by Jacopo del Conti on behalf of the Acquaroli Corporation, those who collected water from public fountains during the night to resell it door to door during the day. Originally located in Via del Corso, it was moved in 1874 to Via Lata, on the side facade of the Palazzo de Caroli Simonetti. The statue represents a man pouring water from a barrel, with his face almost completely worn away due to the insults received over time, probably from street urchins. The figure is often confused with that of a porter, but in reality it represents an acquarolo, an ancient profession that consisted of transporting and selling water in an era in which the Roman aqueducts had been destroyed and water was scarce. The statue is at the center of various legends and popular interpretations. One of the most widespread is that it represents Martin Luther, the German theologian who stayed in the nearby Augustinian monastery in 1511. This association derives from the figure's cap and clothing. Another legend links the statue to a certain Abate Luigi or Rizzio, a porter mentioned in a now-removed tombstone, who died carrying a barrel of wine on his shoulder and inside himself, as the epigraph read. To Abate Luigi, crowned, porter on the public pavement, most skilled in tying burdens. He carried as much weight as he wanted, lived as long as he could, but one day, carrying a barrel of wine on his shoulder and one inside his body, he died against his will. The Fontana del Facchino, together with Pasquino, Marforio, Abate Luigi, Madama Lucrezia, and the Babuino, is part of the so-called Congress of the Wits, the talking statues of Rome used to post anonymous satires against power and social injustice. Finally, a popular legend attributes the paternity of the work to Michelangelo, but this attribution has no historical basis and is generally considered a rumor. In short, the Fontana del Facchino is a 16th century talking statue that represents an acquarolo, a historical figure linked to the transport of water in Rome, surrounded by legends that connect it to Martin Luther or to a porter named Abate Luigi, and which is an integral part of the Roman satirical tradition.